All right, welcome to the HyperFast show. On this episode of the podcast, we've got an amazing guest who is a New York Times best-selling author, investor, educator, and founder of the Renegade Accelerator. Welcome to the show, Amy Jo Martin. All right, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today, Amy?
I'm doing great. I'm joining you from Austin, Texas, and can't complain.
Yeah, and you just moved there, right? So you got your new studio set up and all that good stuff going on.
Yes, I am a fellow podcaster as well, and so we're just in the process of getting the boxes unpacked.
How was the move down to Austin? A lot of people are moving there now. Is it hard to find a place?
There's a full-on migration happening. Absolutely. I mean, it could be an SNL skit what it took to land some real estate here. We moved from South Dakota where we had acreage and property that was a pretty big intentional decision to get back into more community. So we knew that was going to be a big shift, but we had offers in on 6 houses, and we finally were able to secure a neighborhood and house that we love. But it is quite interesting to see this migration, especially from California.
Yeah, when you left South Dakota, like, were you on, like you said, acreage? How big of a area did you guys have?
Well, we had 6 acres, and then we were having a tough time finding something. So I was pretty diligent in being able to kind of convince my husband to buy an RV. So last summer, my son and my husband, we just traveled the country in an RV with a toddler. I don't necessarily recommend that if you have your own company. And we podcasted out of it, and we just looked and looked. We had agents in Arizona, South Dakota, and Texas. And so we were just really trying to find the right fit. So you can imagine, as you know, the real estate market everywhere has shifted. I'd say in Austin, it's just kind of amplified in a big way with inventory being so low.
Yeah, Austin actually had year over year was number 2 in percentage in increase of median home price. And number 1 was actually, what might surprise a lot of people, is Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
We actually visited there on our road
Yeah.
trip. I can't complain about Coeur d'Alene either, in Spokane area.
Probably just as hard to find a place up there. A lot of people are doing what you're doing now, like being more mobile with their business, being able to podcast or work on Zoom. And so out in that area, like Idaho, Montana, they're calling these towns Zoom towns. So because people are just going there, leaving the city to
live their lives.
Get more space. And you guys are kind of doing the opposite, though. You're coming from less populated, more area, after being away, I guess, from San Diego for a while. So what are you looking forward to with Austin, and what kind of led to your decision to, all right, we want to be around more people?
Sure. Really community. And I'm fortunate to have spent quite a bit of time in Austin over the last 10 to 15 years. So have some great relationships here. I've been going to South by Southwest for many years. But really, I work with female entrepreneurs, leaders, executives, and the startup kind of founder scene is wonderful. I'm also an investor, so it's nice to have boots on the ground and see that deal flow here as well. It's just having lived in Southern California as well. I really appreciate the vibrancy here, but the hopeful continuous lack of just feeling you need to be a certain way or do a certain thing. There's a kindness and kind of a, I guess, authenticity.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people that have, longtime Austin residents or newer people echo that same thing, that there's vibrancy, but there's not kind of monolithic thinking or overreach, more personal freedom. So it sounds like a great place. We certainly, wish you and your family success in this transition. Before we kind of dive into, more about what you do and how you're helping people, which I think is, you've got an amazing story around that. Can you give people a little bit of information, just a quick bio on who you are and how you got to, where you are now in Austin in the podcast studio?
Yeah, sure. Had quite a few different stops along the way. I mean, what's kind of interesting fun fact is I'm actually from Wyoming. I grew up in a trailer park. I, never imagined being in big cities per se, but went to school for marketing at Arizona State University. I mean, it was the #1 party school in America. Not exactly Ivy League here. And started working in marketing for a lot of professional sports teams and leagues, and then ended up working in the NBA for several seasons during a pretty influential and inflection point type of time, because digital marketing and social media was just becoming more and more of a thing for brands in 05-06 season all the way to 08-09. And I led digital media. It's called new media at the time because it was so new, and research, and started working with Shaquille O'Neal and some of the other players, Steve Nash, and helping them with their brands online. And that transitioned into me starting my first company in 2009. It was one of the first social media agencies to really exist, and first time entrepreneur in my 20s, had no idea what I was doing and just ran with it. We grew and we grew and started just taking on some big clients, like Hilton Worldwide, Nike, Fox Sports, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and really kind of hit a point where I wrote a book and did a bunch of things kind of in this space of social communication and humanizing brands. And I realized, that's great. And it looked really fancy from the outside, but there was something missing. And I had a bit of a purpose problem. I didn't know why I was doing that, other than just chasing the external carrots of more money, recognition, whatever it may be. And so that's when I really made an intentional decision to kind of ready, set, pause, exited that company, went and lived on a boat in San Diego for a while, and started the podcast, and then launched a program for female leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, called the Renegade Accelerator several years ago. And so this is an intensive program that's equal parts education, collaboration, and accountability. And really, it's for these women to 10x the way they think and execute. And it's been the career love of my life. We have a very specific curriculum, but it's really about the people and the women that bring this mosaic together. And now we invest in each other. We are helping each other grow our, businesses and careers in a lot of different ways.
And what you mentioned, the Renegade Accelerator program. What is that? Who is it for? How is it helping people and building this community?
Great question. So it's really the common denominator is there's a like-minded, like-heartedness about these driven women. They've put some points on the board. Some are high-level real estate agents, who and as well as, like I said, founders who are either fundraising or looking at the next step, whether it's acquisition. We've got global SVPs of big brands, very diverse and sector agnostic. But these women are all in an inflection point where they're ready to accelerate, and they're feeling that momentum. And it's not just a flash in the pan. It's something they want to continue to leverage. So the curriculum includes, public speaking, growing your voice of authority and thought leadership in your sector, building your brand online, and humanizing in order to monetize. And we even have a wealth creation module. Women, I was never taught how to invest per se. However, I've been angel investing for about 10 years, early seed stage, and leveraging, my intellectual capital as well. And so that's a whole area of curriculum that we're discussing and teaching. So it's we have women in 10 different countries. It's just a really powerful, incredible, impactful group.
And what have you been investing in the last, you said 10 years, I guess a decade now?
Yeah, it's been it's a pretty diverse portfolio. It's funny. There's actually a company I'm literally closing on today, and it is AI for IVF. So looking at how artificial intelligence can impact the in vitro fertility challenges that we're seeing and bring that cost down, as well as the effectiveness up. I have another software company. I have an ad agency in my portfolio, Super Coffee, which is an incredible brand here. That's very healthy, but amazing tasting coffee. And really a lot of these deals are coming to me through women in the Renegade Accelerator, and I'm being exposed to them that way. So always looking to help female founders, and inject as much influence and impact as I can from my career.
Well, they definitely say that your net worth equals your network, right? So the more like high quality people you surround yourself with, just the more deal flow, opportunity flow, like in life in general, you're going to get. If you kind of find that to be the case? I
do. In fact, I think there's a narrative about women and female investors, and we're just, obviously there isn't as much funding that we're seeing at the institutional level, but also as angels, I think it's a lot of it's communication. So when some of the mentors that I have, I've invested in them, and now they bring me into their deals and ask me if I want to be a part of it. But word starts to spread, and I don't think it's an intentional thing necessarily that I hadn't been seeing these before. People just didn't know. And so when you start sharing, what it is you do and why you do it, that becomes a way for people to want to help you and send you opportunities. And now I'm able to extend those to my community through either Angel Syndicate or SPVs or whatever may make sense. But my goal is to get more women a seat at the cap table, not just a seat at the table.
What and that's I think an amazing goal, and it's definitely great to see women like you helping other women. Specifically with social media, what has changed since you started early in this? I think you mentioned like 2008 or 9, so that was really early in the process. Like smartphones were just kind of starting to come out then. That was maybe a year or two after the iPhone. Mm-hmm. What's changed since then with how people grow their brands online, grow their presence online, and kind of the strategies and tactics that people are doing now compared to 10 years ago or so?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, so much has changed, and then there are a lot of fundamentals that haven't. My book Renegades Write the Rules talks a lot about the fundamentals, but let's talk about what has changed. The economic models for the platforms has evolved, right? So we see the algorithms are much more, of a driving force. And with all these companies having gone public, the stakeholders, the advertisers they have a big seat at the table and a voice as to the user experience, sometimes indirectly and sometimes directly. So I'd say, the space, it's still real time. We still have such an opportunity for innovation when it comes to accelerating communication. We're only bound by the speed of technology. There are no geographic barriers. But in my experience, human behavior has evolved as well, in terms of I think that it felt to me that the earlier days of, let's just say 2008, there was a little bit more, I'd say, innocence. And we realized, it's called social media, but it's really not media. It's communication. But most people treat it like marketing and media. And so that's going to change the experience for everyone. There's a lack of, or there's too much anonymity in my experience, in my opinion, where we aren't held responsible for our actions.
Hey, hold that thought for a minute. Are you a real estate agent in the DMV area or thinking about becoming a real estate agent in the DMV area? Why not join the highest selling team in the DMV? The Carrie Scholl team is hiring more agents. We have the best training systems, the best culture, and the best environment to get you to the next level, whether that's starting out and getting to 6 figures or getting from 6 figures to 250 or to $500,000 or even beyond. Go to carrieschollcareers.com. Again, that's carrieschollcareers.com.
So does that mean like user 235 commenting like, this is dumb, or just, stuff they wouldn't say in person to someone's face? They're just can fire away online kind of.
Yeah, that behind the keyboard confidence that I was able to do a clinical research study with a scientist a few years ago, and my question that we wanted to answer was, does what we post and what we do online impact our behavior offline? So we know that it can impact maybe how someone feels, but does it really impact what we do, our actions? So your comments, your photos, your messages, your videos, does that impact human behavior when we bridge the virtual world with the physical world? And we were able to arrive at a yes, absolutely. So that even those the anonymous messages are still making an impact offline. And that's powerful, sometimes dangerous. And I think it's just, there isn't a lot of governance or regulation. So it's still the wild, wild west. And these are private, or these companies are not, they are not public domain. We're not paying for our Instagram account. In fact, we aren't even renting it. It's not our space, but we do tend to think of it as these are my followers. But the rules can change at any moment.
Right. What, given everything of just the nature of how it is right now, what specifically are you recommending to your clients for their branding, personal branding, and online strategy?
So one thing that has remained true, and it will continue, is that humans connect with humans, not logos. And we talk about this concept of personal branding and this word that it's actually counterintuitive because you don't brand yourself, you just are yourself. And that creates your brand. That is your brand, right? So there's a lot of unraveling.
So you can't really be something that you're not online, basically, and succeed at it long term, I think, right? Would you agree
Correct.
with that? Or?
Correct. And so my whole kind of philosophy is humanize to monetize. Make those connections and they will convert if they're real, and they will convert over and over and compound over time. But the thought that branding yourself is a color palette or a filter, similar to what you might see in a magazine, that's aesthetics. That's not branding. How someone feels about you is your brand, right? So that's a notion that seems so logical and kind of Captain Obvious, but it's pretty difficult sometimes to untrain ourselves.
Do people normally have a good sense of who they are and what they want to project, or is this something you have to work with people to, maybe they're not even aware of this or haven't spent much time thinking about it?
You nailed it. It's fascinating. Look, the women that I'm able to work with and guide, they're very driven, very, decorated in their careers. And a lot of times they haven't had an opportunity or taken the opportunity to step back and say, who am I? Why am I doing this? You know, and back to what I was sharing earlier, I hadn't done that either. The outside didn't match the inside. And so getting very intentional about dialing in, I refer to it as your brand essence. You know, if we can lead with who you are and why you do what you do versus what you're doing, we can make much deeper or real connections that will convert. But first you have to be able to identify that. And that's deep work, right? That's life work for a lot of us. And so that's much more difficult than it may seem.
And is this, I mean, this is something you kind of went through yourself, and then now you've written the book about it, created these programs around it, and you're helping other, specifically women, kind of go through this process as well?
Correct. Absolutely. So, you know, I help women down the black diamonds of life and business, those difficult things. And most people don't ever take the time to stop and ask themselves, who am I and why am I doing this? What do I want? And they kind of subscribe to what they think everybody else wants them to do, or what they think they should do. And it's fascinating to see kind of our culture and our society romanticize two sides of the spectrum. We've got the hustle, chase, grind, sleep when you die, 24/7 mentality. And then we have this pendulum and this spectrum where this other side, and I've been on both of them, is let's meditate, drink kombucha, do yoga, surrender, and journal. And in my experience, you know, I run pretty hot. I have pretty intense personality, I guess you'd say. And when I start to come to the middle, I feel like then you're watering down that good potency. So imagine, I call it the quantum peak. Rather than trying to come down from one side or the other into a 5 and taking my, you know, drive side down to a 5, or my surrender, allow side, intuition side to a 5, think of it as going up. And so keeping that, you know, that power, but bringing it more upward into a peak, because the romanticizing of both sides, again, in my experience, it doesn't really work. And for the women that I work with, it's not a good look for us to live on one side or the other.
Do you think the pandemic changed any of this, or made people question this more, or even just look, you know, like ask these questions more that you've been talking about?
I do, Dan, and I do for two reasons. One, it gave us a little bit of space to do an audit on our lives and be more reflective and hopefully more self-aware of what matters, but also of what we want. How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And it became a microscope, right? Like we were really aware of our days because we're all locked in houses. And then secondly, experiential, more of an experiential side. I think this light bulb coming on, to your point in the beginning, of these Zoom cities where you realize you have more map freedom than maybe you thought, or more influence now on where you spend your days. So that's evolving. And as an entrepreneur for the last, 13, 14 years, I intentionally left corporate to design my own day. That's just all I wanted. So I feel like I've been living that for a while, and I might be a little kind of, I forget what it's like when you start to get that map freedom. But I do remember how incredible it feels in the beginning, especially because it just perceived control is an ingredient of happiness, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who, you know, they get to look at a mountain now, or a lake, or not have like 1,000 people living on top of them. And yeah, you're right. Like when you first kind of get that moment of understanding that you do have more control over it than you at least thought. It is pretty powerful.
100%. And that we really can still conduct business, grow our careers from a forest or from a boat or wherever else. So we have a psychologist that graduated from the program, and her goal was to take her clinical in-person practice and move to her cabin in the woods full time and do it through teletherapy. And she was able to do that, where she may never step foot in an office again. And that's completely possible, and her business is growing. So I think that, with social communication as well, these tools allow us to connect in an exponential way. We just had a good friend of mine who's a graduate from the program, the Renegade Accelerator. She is a top real estate agent in Chicago for Compass, and she does multi-million-dollar deals from direct messages on Instagram. That started that way, right? The lead generation is coming from these humanized experiences and interactions that lead into, big deals in terms
Are
of sales.
Are those outbound, or is she putting out content and then people are like reaching out to her on direct message?
It's both. It's
Okay.
both, and we've dissected these communications, and about 25% are from other agents in different cities who are referring that she's maintained a strong relationship with over social. Another 25% are new and they're friends of friends. And then 50% are either existing relationships or repeat, customers. So it's over time. It just doesn't happen overnight, but this is a constant funnel that she's working on every day. And it's pretty incredible to see how she's been able to grow her business. I think she did $50 million in sales volume last year during the pandemic. And there was she said at least the number one lead generator for sure was Instagram. And her team now, that obviously works for her, is also taking that approach and really growing their business through social.
Was it mostly organic growth on Instagram or the paid advertisements?
100% organic for this specific situation. Yeah.
Wow, that's it's amazing. What platforms are you coaching people on to use? Is like Instagram the main one, or are there other ones, or is it all of them, or what's like platform wise, what where
really all of them? LinkedIn is often overlooked. It's extremely powerful, especially a lot of the women in my community and within the Renegade Collective are public speakers. So, and we have marketing partnerships with big brands as well. So, to build those relationships with the companies, associations, agents, bureaus that book you as a speaker, LinkedIn and Twitter are great places for that. A lot of the misunderstanding about what I refer to as vanity metrics is something we focus on. So a following does not equal dollars. Followers don't equal dollars, right? So a lot of times you'll see, let's just say Instagram, someone with a pretty humble following, maybe couple thousand followers, but that is their number one lead generator because they're doing business behind the scenes based off of what's happening through direct messages and or relationships that are growing from there. So really it's everything. Twitter. We have women who have gone viral on TikTok, a fertility doctor who is doing incredibly well with her messages on TikTok. So it's
TikTok seems to have the best algorithm organically. Like if you put out specific content and stay in that niche, they seem to really know how to put that in front of more people that would be interested in that compared to the other platforms.
Agreed. And I think too, as functionality continues to evolve for TikTok, potential acquisitions. Like consolidation really does impact a lot. When Facebook acquired Instagram, you start seeing a pretty big change in the algorithm. But also the newness. I remember back in the day when Twitter, you really would see the tweets of everyone you followed because there was enough bandwidth, right? There was enough fire hose because it wasn't as populated. And so I imagine as we see TikTok continue to grow, that could change over time.
Yeah, they just added promoted posts. So now you can, and I think it's on a much limited basis compared to like Facebook and Instagram. But that is indication at the least that, you know, at some point it'll become more pay to play like the other platforms have kind of migrated to.
Hey, hold that thought. Do you want to get 100 tips for free from my best-selling real estate book, The Hyperlocal HyperFast Real Estate Agent? If you do, go to hyperfasttips.com and you can download 100 of my best tips today. Again, that's hyperfasttips.com. You can download 100 tips on how to grow your business, get more clients, deliver more value to more people. Go to hyperfasttips.com.
Yeah, they're going to have to dial in the economic model at some point and monetize. And usually that's your ads. And hopefully it'll feel, it won't be too disruptive to the user experience because they've got a good thing going right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting platform, and it's interesting too how they've succeeded stuff, and then like Facebook and Instagram take those bits and pieces and try to put it on their platform, and you know, we've kind of seen that with Reels and some of the other stuff,
and stories and Twitter with the audio. Yeah, it's kind of been that way for a very long time too. You know, looking at, I don't know if you remember location-based services like Foursquare or Gowalla back in the day, but you tend to see a feature, if it does well, it's going to be mimicked.
What do you think, you know, looking ahead, if you're kind of looking at your crystal ball, what do you think will be important now or more important, or will be more important like in 12 months from now than it is even right now with respect to social media? So like what kind of changes do you think will happen that people might not be aware of?
Here are 3 things that come to mind. Number 1, we have to remember, if you're using the space as a marketer or as media per se, to connect with your audience, you have to remember you don't own that relationship and that bridge. So the more you can build your email list or get that relationship and energy over into your own domains, the more access and control you'll be able to keep. So I've seen where on Twitter, you know, I used to have over 1 million followers, and then one day 50,000. It was more than that. I think it was like 70. I wrote an article about this in Adweek, but they just disappeared.
The purge. Like, yeah, I've heard about this.
Oh yeah. So I'm emailing Twitter and I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Like, I used to work with the Twitter office when there were 11 people there, and I'm like, is this really you just scrubbing your list of like lapsed users? And then all of a sudden those followers came back. The exact same
wow.
Oh, but then they went away again. So it was like, you really have zero control over what happens, not only with the algorithm, but with your account and following. So yes, keep it as healthy as you can. The space is powerful. Do not dismiss it, but try to build those relationships into an environment where you do have more control, which is email, your own website, mobile, build bridges, you know, in person and bridge the virtual world with the physical world. So that's one thing. Number 2, I think because of the pandemic and this like, let's reset button has been hit, we're demanding that everybody's a little more real, right? I feel like the polished, high production content, you open up someone's Instagram grid and you see something out of a magazine, isn't resonating quite as much. And then third, I do think there will continue to be more consolidation. And so whenever we see that, we see a pretty big change in either features or algorithms, economic models. So if we see, acquisitions, we've got audio and Clubhouse out there now, and a lot of podcasting platforms that are popping up that are different. And so the users definitely have a voice. And I think, what used to work doesn't always work now.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think, I think there's going to be more changes coming, and platforms grabbing more control of the audience you've built. So, focus on getting them over to other things that you control. And, that's a big deal. Like I know a lot of people had Twitter follower purges, and did they ever kind of give you an explanation, or say, were they just scrubbing dead accounts or something, or?
Right. Yeah. And I've had an account for a very long time, so I can imagine there's plenty of lapsed in there, but yeah, I've been in Instagram jail before. I don't know if you've ever been put in there, where
I think so. Yeah. I've had
followed a few too many people at one time, and they did not like that. So my account seizes up, and if we
the problem we've had on Facebook and Instagram is advertising, because some of what we do is brokerage.
Mhm.
Right? So we're helping people buy and sell homes, but then we've also got books and events and other things where we teach real estate agents, and they put those in the same category as housing, even though it's clearly not an offer to buy a house. It's something teaching real estate agents, and the algorithm doesn't understand the difference. And I think unless you're spending like 7 figures a month in advertising, like maybe even 8 figures, I don't know what the level is, but you're not going to ever talk to a person. So we've had issues with that before, and there's nothing you can do about it, really.
Yeah, I can see how the targeting of a $20 book versus a $2 million house is going to be a different audience, or at least some different insights there. It's still, I'd say, the wild, wild west, and it changes daily. So what worked Tuesday may not work Thursday, and it's highly frustrating, but it's also kind of like this big reminder of we have very little control, right? I think it was Tim Ferriss that said, trying to market on social is kind of like trying to market on the top of a volcano, where you just have very little consistency that you can build, because it's very volatile.
Well, I think that's a good explanation. It can either be a really fun ride, or it can all go away like that. So, definitely do it, but get them onto other things that you control, and have redundancy, right? Have redundancy in like all of your economic marketing models, etc.
Right. And repeat those key, value offerings and propositions, because A, not everybody's going to see it the first time or even the second time. B, they probably have to hear it 7 times to remember and recall it. So it's what seems like old hat to you and boring at some point is probably just starting to resonate with your audience. So don't be afraid to double down on those key points that differentiate you.
All right, Amy, before we wrap up, I always do a HyperFast round at the end if you're ready for some rapid fire questions and answers. You froze for a second.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
All right. I don't know if you heard. I was just saying at the end, I always wrap up with a HyperFast round if you're ready for some quick questions and answers.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
All right. What's your biggest piece of advice to a new real estate agent starting out today?
Oh my gosh, that's good. I'd say find your tribe. Find, work with the people that you resonate with, and you'll convert. And then that word of mouth, it will be like wildfire for you. But don't try to push something if it's not working.
What do you think is a big mistake or overlooked opportunity that you see
Successful people, do all the time?
Try to do too many things at the same time. Lack of focus. Shiny object syndrome.
That's a good one for us all to remember. What's a business challenge that you've had, and how did you overcome it, or what did you learn from it?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'd say my biggest would be really trying to focus on skill a lot, and maybe some passion, but not having that purpose. And you can imagine a Venn diagram: passion, purpose, and skill. That sweet spot in the middle is where I like to live and play. But you want all three of those. Otherwise, something will always be missing. And sometimes people forget that you can mix skill in with passion and purpose. So it's not a fairy tale. It's very real, and you can create that intersection.
What are the key things that you look for when you are evaluating an investment opportunity?
The founders being able to articulate why they do what they do and who they are through their company and the purpose of their brand. I look at investing as, this was advice given to me a long time ago, but think of it as a surfer, a surfboard, and a wave. The surfer is the founder, surfboard's the product or service, and the wave is the trend. And ideally, all three of those are very strong. But the surfer is the most important in my experience, because the product, that surfboard's going to change likely over time.
Right. That's an interesting analogy. Last one, where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
I see myself, my son is 2, so he'll be 12, whatever grade that is. Maybe his, he's in school. Every day is spent living in that intersection of where purpose, passion, and skill collide. And, I'm not looking too far in the future or too far in the past, just staying present. And that's been a playbook that's worked fairly well. So we'll keep that one.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I had a blast, very informative, and you've given our listeners and viewers a lot to think about, and some really great actionable items. Before we sign off, I know you've got a really great event coming up, or program that you're launching. So do you want to tell people about that, and then also just how they can connect with you if they want to learn more about anything you do, or how to follow you on social media?
Sure, absolutely. So on social, I'm at Amy Jo Martin, AMYJO MARTIN, pretty much on all the social touch points. That's also my main website. The Renegade Accelerator is our program that I've talked about a few times here today, and it launches a couple times a year. So check out renegadeaccelerator.com, and you will find all the information and the results that the graduates have experienced directly from them. There's video, and just hope to connect with your audience and your listeners. And thank you so much for having me on, Dan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy. You gave tremendous value. Appreciated hearing your story, your insights, and everything you're doing for entrepreneurs, women, females on social media branding. There's a lot of great tips, and that we all could use, not just females, even though I know you focus on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great mix, and congrats on what you've built.
All right. Well, thank you, Amy. For everyone else listening and tuning in, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the HyperFast Show. Subscribe to us if you want to make sure you get the latest and greatest HyperFast shows. And remember, we love reviews. Reviews help us bring better and better guests and improve our shows. So give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you want to see more, click right here. And if you want 100 real estate tips from my best-selling book, click right here to download them instantly. And if you're new to this channel, click below to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out. And leave some comments about what you think on the videos.